The clock on my classroom wall read 3:42 p.m. when my phone started vibrating across my desk. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by construction paper, hearts, and glitter, helping my second graders finish Valentine's decorations for the hallway. In 2 weeks, those same hallways would be empty for winter break, and I'd be walking down a different aisle entirely. The thought made me smile as I reached for the phone, probably another vendor confirming details for the wedding. The number on the screen wasn't one I recognized. Miami area code, but not saved in my contacts. Hello? Is this Lena Rodriguez? The voice was male, official, the kind of tone that makes your stomach drop before your brain even processes why. Yes, speaking. This is Fire Captain Morris, with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Your fiancé, Carlos Martinez, has been transported to Jackson Memorial Hospital. The construction paper heart I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, drifting down to land among the scattered glitter on the floor. Around me, 7-year-olds kept chattering, kept cutting, kept gluing, oblivious to the fact that my world had just tilted sideways. What happened? Is he okay? My voice came out steady somehow, even as my hands started shaking. There was a fire at an apartment complex on Brickell Avenue. He was pulled from the scene with smoke inhalation. He's stable. But ma'am, he wasn't alone. Those 4 words hung in the air between us. He wasn't alone. Of course he wasn't alone. Carlos was a firefighter. He was probably rescuing someone, being the hero he always was. That's who he was. The man who'd helped me believe in love again after my first husband shattered me. He was with someone who also required medical attention, Captain Morris continued, a female resident of the apartment. They're both being treated in the ER. Something in his voice, some careful neutrality, made the hair on my arms stand up. This wasn't the tone you use when you're talking about a hero and a victim. This was something else. Which hospital? Jackson Memorial, downtown campus. The ER entrance is on. I was already grabbing my purse, already motioning to my teaching assistant to take over. The kids barely noticed as I rushed out. Their teacher was always calm, always composed. Even now, walking through those hallways I'd walked 1,000 times, I looked normal, put together. Not like a woman whose carefully reconstructed life might be crumbling. The drive downtown was a blur of palm trees and traffic, and the voice in my head repeating, "He wasn't alone, he wasn't alone, he wasn't alone." I thought about the last time I'd seen him, this morning, kissing me goodbye in our kitchen while my sister Isabella scrolled through her phone at the breakfast bar. She'd been living with us for the past month, ever since she'd texted me crying about being broke again, about her influencer career not paying enough for rent. I'd felt good about helping her, proud even. After our parents died when I was 19 and she was 14, I'd been more than a sister. I'd been a mother, a guardian, a protector, putting her through college, paying for her mistakes, supporting her dreams. That's what family did. The hospital parking garage smelled like exhaust and antiseptic. I found a spot on the 3rd level and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to prepare myself for whatever came next. Carlos would be okay. He had to be okay. We were getting married in 2 weeks. The venue was booked. The dress was hanging in my closet. The invitations had gone out. We'd survived so much to get here. My first marriage had ended 3 years ago when I'd come home early from a teacher conference to find my husband in our bed with a woman from his office. The divorce had been brutal, public, humiliating. Everyone knew. Everyone pitied me. I'd been 26 and broken, convinced I'd never trust anyone again. Then Carlos walked into my life. Literally walked in. The firefighter who responded when old Mr. Chen next door had a kitchen fire. He'd been so gentle, so kind, checking on me even though my apartment was fine, making sure I wasn't too shaken up by the sirens and smoke. He'd asked me to coffee, then dinner. Then slowly, carefully, he'd helped me remember how to hope. I grabbed my phone and headed for the elevator. The ER was chaos, the way emergency rooms always are. People crying, machines beeping, that peculiar hospital smell that's somehow both sterile and organic. The intake nurse was a tired-looking woman with graying hair pulled back tight. "I'm looking for Carlos Martinez. He was brought in from a fire." She typed into her computer, her expression neutral. "Room 7, through those doors, take a left. Check in at the nurse's station." I pushed through the double doors into organized chaos. The nurse's station was an island of calm in the middle of controlled emergency. A younger nurse looked up as I approached. "Carlos Martinez? Are you family?" "I'm his fiancé." The word felt strange in my mouth suddenly. Fragile. "He's stable. The doctor is with him now." She glanced at her computer screen, then back at me. Something flickered across her face. Pity? Concern? The other patient from the same incident is in the bed next to his. They shared the ambulance. "Can I see him?" She hesitated. Just for a second, but I saw it. "Of course." Room 7. I walked down the corridor, my flat squeaking slightly on the linoleum. Room 7. The curtain was pulled partially closed. I could hear voices inside, low and intense. I reached for the curtain, pulled it back, and my entire world exploded. Carlos was there, propped up in the bed, oxygen mask pushed down around his neck, soot still smudged across his face. His eyes were closed. And in the bed next to him, separated by maybe 4 feet and a rolling table, was my sister, Isabella. My baby sister, the girl I'd raised, the person I'd sacrificed everything for, was lying in a hospital bed with a bandage on her forehead and an IV in her arm. Her eyes met mine, and I watched the blood drain from her face. Time seemed to stop. My brain scrambled to make sense of the scene, to find an innocent explanation. She'd been nearby when the fire started. She'd been visiting a friend in the building. She'd been trying to help. There had to be a reason, a good reason, why my fiancé and my sister were being treated in the same room after being pulled from the same fire. But the look on her face told me everything. It wasn't confusion or relief at seeing me. It was pure, animal terror. The look of someone who'd been caught. "Lena." Her voice cracked. "I can explain." That's when Carlos's eyes opened. He saw me, and I watched comprehension dawn on his face, watched guilt replace grogginess, watched the man I loved, the man I was supposed to marry in 14 days, realize that everything was about to fall apart. "Lena, baby, let me," he started, trying to sit up, grimacing in pain. "Don't." The word came out flat, cold. I looked from him to her, to him to her. Whose apartment was it? Silence. The kind of silence that's louder than screaming. The fire report said the blaze started at 2847 Brickell Avenue, apartment 12C. I pulled out my phone, my hand surprisingly steady, and looked at the address I'd just Googled. "Isabella, isn't that the building you told me you couldn't afford anymore? The one you moved out of to come live with us because you were broke?" Her face crumpled. "Lena, please. You lied. It wasn't a question. You never gave up that apartment, did you? You've been living with us, eating our food, accepting money from me for necessities, while keeping a whole separate apartment. Why?" Carlos made a sound, something between a groan and a protest, but I held up my hand. I wasn't done. The pieces were falling into place now, each one landing with devastating clarity. "How long?" I asked, my voice still eerily calm. "How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé?" "It's not we didn't," Isabella started crying, that dramatic crying she'd perfected as a teenager when she wanted something. "It used to work on me. Not anymore." A doctor entered, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes that quickly assessed the situation. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm Dr. Patel. Perhaps we should talk outside." "No." I cut her off. "I want the truth. Right here, right now." I looked at Carlos, who was staring at the ceiling like he could disappear into it. "Tell me." "It was a mistake," he said, the words sounding pathetic even as they left his mouth. "Lena, I swear it meant nothing. We were drunk one night. And—" "One night?" I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. Firefighters don't end up in someone's apartment in the middle of a Thursday afternoon because of one drunken night. Try again. Isabella's sobs got louder. A nurse appeared at the curtain, drawn by the commotion, but Dr. Patel waved her away. 3 months, Isabella whispered. "It's been 3 months. 3 months!" I did the math in my head. That was exactly when she'd moved in with us. When she'd cried about being broke, about needing help, about family being all she had left. I'd held her while she cried. I'd set up the guest room. I'd told Carlos we needed to help her, that she was family, and he'd said yes. Of course he'd said yes. Because he was already sleeping with her. You moved in with us, I said slowly, so you could what? Have easier access to my fiancé? Compare notes on how gullible I am? It wasn't like that. Isabella tried to sit up but winced. I do love you, Lena. You're my sister. This wasn't about hurting you. Then what was it about? I stepped closer to her bed, and she actually flinched. Good, because from where I'm standing, you took everything I gave you, every sacrifice I made raising you, and you used it to destroy me. Again. Again? Dr. Patel asked quietly. I didn't take my eyes off my sister. My first husband cheated on me. She knows this. She held me while I cried about it. She helped me pack his things. She told me I deserved better. I paused, and then she turned around and did the exact same thing to me. You always had everything, Isabella suddenly shouted, her tears turning angry. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect men falling over themselves for you. Do you know what it's like being your sister? Being compared to you my whole life? Just once I wanted something that was yours. The honesty of it hit me like a slap. At least she was admitting it now. After all these years of playing the sweet little sister, the victim, the one who needed protecting, she was finally showing me who she really was. So you took him. I looked at Carlos, who had tears running down his face now. And you. What's your excuse? Was I not enough? Was helping me heal from my first betrayal so boring that you decided to create a second one? I love you, Lena. I do. I was going to end it, I swear. The wedding is in 2 weeks, I was going to. The wedding. I pulled out my phone again. My fingers found the number I needed. Is canceled. I called the venue coordinator, standing right there in that hospital room, and canceled everything. The hall, the catering, the flowers, the DJ. 14 days' notice meant I'd lose most of the deposits. I didn't care. Each confirmation of cancellation felt like removing a stone from my chest. Isabella was crying harder now. You can't just, what about the baby? Everything stopped. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering on the hard floor. What? Dr. Patel sighed. Miss Rodriguez, your sister is approximately 12 weeks pregnant. We discovered this during the examination. Given her smoke inhalation, we needed to assess 12 weeks, 3 months, the exact timeline of their affair. I looked at Carlos, who had gone completely white. You didn't know, I said flatly. He shook his head, looking between me and Isabella like a trapped animal. Tell her it's not yours, I said to him. Tell her you used protection, that there's no way. His silence was the answer. Isabella reached out toward me, her hand trembling. Lena, please. I'm scared. I don't know how to do this alone. I need you. The audacity of it stole my breath. She'd slept with my fiancé, lied to me for months, gotten pregnant with his child, and now she needed me? You should have thought about that before you spread your legs for my fiancé in the apartment I helped you keep, I said, my voice like ice. You want to know what you're going to do? You're going to figure it out. Like an adult. Like the adult I tried to raise you to be. I turned to Carlos. We're done. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the apartment. Since it's in both our names, we'll need to... Miss Rodriguez? A new voice interrupted. An older woman in civilian clothes stood at the curtain. I'm Detective Santos. I need to ask you a few questions about the fire. That's when I noticed the way she was looking at Carlos and Isabella, not with sympathy, with suspicion. The fire marshal has some concerns about the origin of the blaze, she continued. Candles were found near the bed, but the pattern suggests they may have been knocked over during activity. Her emphasis on the last word made it clear what kind of activity she meant. We need to determine if this was negligence or something else. Are you saying they started the fire? I asked. I'm saying we're investigating all possibilities. Detective Santos pulled out a notebook. Miss Rodriguez, when was the last time you saw Mr. Martinez? This morning. Around 7. At our apartment on Coral Way. She wrote this down. And you, Miss Isabella Rodriguez? When did you last see Mr. Martinez? My sister looked at me, then at the detective, then at her hands. This morning, around 11, at my apartment. So he'd kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, said he had a shift at the station, and then went straight to my sister's bed. I see, Detective Santos said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. And the fire started at approximately 2:15 p.m. That's quite a long visit, Mr. Martinez. Carlos looked like he might be sick. We fell asleep. The candles were, for we didn't realize. Save it, I said. Detective, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I need to not be in this room anymore. She nodded. Let's step outside. I followed her into the hallway, leaving behind the man I'd almost married and the sister I'd sacrificed everything to raise. Behind us, I could hear Isabella crying and Carlos trying to talk to her, their voices mixing with the general chaos of the ER. Detective Santos led me to a small consulting room off the main corridor. It had a table, 2 chairs, and a box of tissues that had probably witnessed 1,000 tragedies. I need to be honest with you, Miss Rodriguez, she said once we were seated. The fire marshal believes this was accidental, caused by negligence. But there's another issue. She paused. The apartment is registered in your name. What? According to building records, apartment 12C at 2847 Brickell Avenue is leased to Lena Rodriguez. Your sister is listed as an additional resident, but you're the legal tenant. The betrayal just kept coming. I co-signed for her 2 years ago when she couldn't qualify on her own. She was supposed to transfer it to her name once her credit improved. She told me she'd done that she'd then given up the apartment because she couldn't afford it. Do you pay the rent? No. At least, I thought I wasn't. She said she'd taken over the payments. A horrible thought occurred to me. Oh God, she's been using the money I gave her for groceries and gas to keep that apartment, hasn't she? Detective Santos's expression was sympathetic. I can't speak to your family finances, but you should know that as the legal tenant, you could be liable for damages from the fire. Of course I could, because nothing about this situation could just be simple betrayal. It had to be betrayal with consequences, with legal ramifications, with my name on the paperwork. The building management will be in touch, she continued. Given that the fire was caused by negligence during what appears to be an illicit relationship, there may be additional complications. How much are we talking about? The apartment is destroyed. Smoke and water damage to the units above and below. Probably $200,000 in total damages. Your renter's insurance might cover some of it, but I'd likely be on the hook for the rest. I closed my eyes and saw my savings, my teacher's salary, my carefully budgeted life going up in smoke. Literally. Is there anything else you need from me? I asked. Not right now. But don't leave town and keep your phone on. We may have follow-up questions. I left the hospital without going back to that room. I couldn't. If I saw them again, I didn't trust what might come out of my mouth or my hands. The drive home was automatic. I didn't remember making turns or stopping at lights. I just found myself in the parking lot of the apartment building Carlos and I shared, staring up at the 3rd-floor window where our home was, where my sister had been living, where she'd probably been laughing at me every single day. I climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator, needing the physical exertion to ground me. The apartment looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. Carlos's firefighter gear hung by the door. Isabella's makeup was scattered across the bathroom counter. My wedding dress hung in the closet, white and pristine and useless. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. My abuela, my father's mother, the woman who'd helped me raise Isabella after our parents died. She was 82 now, living in a retirement community in Hialeah, but her mind was sharp as ever. Mija, she answered on the 2nd ring. How are the wedding preparations? There's not going to be a wedding, abuela. Silence. Then, what happened? I told her. All of it. The fire, the hospital, the affair, the pregnancy, the money, the lies. When I finished, the silence on the other end stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Abuela? I knew, she said quietly. What? I knew about Carlos and Isabella. I saw them together 3 weeks ago at that Cuban restaurant in Little Havana. They didn't see me. I was with my friend Rosa, sitting in the back. They were holding hands across the table. I couldn't breathe. And you didn't tell me? I didn't want to ruin your wedding. Her voice cracked. You'd been through so much with that first husband. You were so happy. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe there is no maybe innocent about holding hands with your sister's fiancé. I was shouting now, pacing the apartment. How could you keep this from me? Because I'm a coward, she said simply. Because I didn't want to be the one to break your heart again. because I hoped it would end on its own. I hung up on her. I'd never hung up on my grandmother in my life, but I did it then, added her to the growing list of people who'd betrayed me, who'd chosen protecting themselves over protecting me. The apartment felt suffocating. I grabbed my laptop and started searching for lawyers, for new apartments, for storage units. I worked mechanically, checking boxes, filling out forms, taking the first steps to dismantle the life I'd built. My phone rang constantly. Carlos called 17 times. Isabella called 12. My abuela called 4 times. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I texted my principal, asking for an emergency personal day tomorrow. Then I texted my best friend Marisa. Need you. Now. She showed up 30 minutes later with wine and ice cream and a fury that matched my own. I told her everything while we sat on the floor of my living room, eating straight from the containers. I'm going to kill them both, she said seriously. We'll make it look like an accident, maybe another fire. I almost laughed. Almost. Did you know? I asked her. Did you ever suspect? No. God, no, Lena. If I had even the smallest suspicion, I would have told you immediately. She grabbed my hand. You know that, right? I did. Marisa had been there through everything. The first divorce, the slow rebuilding, the cautious hope when Carlos came into my life. She'd been my maid of honor, had spent hours helping me pick the dress, the flowers, the everything. The dress, I said suddenly. I spent $2,000 on that dress. We'll burn it, Marisa said firmly. Ceremonially, in my backyard, with marshmallows. This time I did laugh. A broken sound that turned into crying. I cried for the first time since the phone call, and once I started, I couldn't stop. I cried for the wedding that wouldn't happen, for the sister I'd lost, for the family I'd tried to build, for the trust I'd never get back. Marisa held me while I sobbed, and when I finally ran out of tears, she helped me pack bags. Carlos's clothes went into trash bags and got left by the door. Isabella's things went into boxes. By midnight, any trace of them was gone from my bedroom, my bathroom, my space. You can stay with me, Marisa offered, as long as you need. No, I'm not leaving this apartment. I pay half the rent. He can find somewhere else to go. I changed the locks that night, called an emergency locksmith, paid the after-hours fee, and watched him replace every lock and deadbolt. Then I texted Carlos. Your things are in the hallway. Don't try to come in. The locks are changed. My lawyer will contact you about the apartment lease. His response came immediately. Please, can we just talk? I love you. This was a mistake. I'll do anything. I blocked his number. The next 3 days were a blur of lawyers and phone calls and paperwork. The wedding venue surprisingly agreed to refund half the deposit when I explained the situation. The caterer was less sympathetic but agreed to a partial refund. My dress was non-refundable, so Marisa and I did in fact burn it in her backyard. We didn't roast marshmallows, but we drank champagne and watched $2,000 worth of satin and lace turn to ash. It felt good. Carlos moved out while I was at work, leaving his key on the kitchen counter with a note I threw away without reading. The apartment felt bigger without him, emptier but cleaner somehow. I could breathe again. Isabella tried to visit twice. I didn't let her in. The second time, she sat outside my door for an hour, crying and begging me to talk to her. I put in earbuds and turned up my music until she finally left. My abuela sent flowers with a note apologizing. I kept the flowers but threw away the note. The fire investigation concluded with a determination of accidental negligence. The building's insurance covered most of the damage, but I was still on the hook for $30,000. The lawyer I'd hired was fighting it, arguing that since I wasn't present and hadn't authorized the use of the apartment, I shouldn't be liable. It would take months to resolve. My students asked where my engagement ring went. I told them I decided I liked my hands free. They accepted this with the easy acceptance of 7-year-olds and went back to their math problems. Time moved forward, because time does that, regardless of whether you're ready or not. 6 months later, I was settling into my newly solo life. The apartment was mine alone now, Carlos having finally signed off his half of the lease in the settlement. I'd redecorated, painted the walls a soft gray, bought new furniture that held no memories. I'd started therapy, worked through the betrayal, the anger, the complicated grief of losing a sister who was still alive. I hadn't spoken to Isabella since the hospital. I'd heard through family gossip that she'd had the baby, a girl, that Carlos was trying to be involved, but Isabella was making it difficult. That they weren't together, that they could barely stand each other now that the affair had lost its illicit thrill. I felt nothing about this information. Not satisfaction, not pain, nothing. They'd become irrelevant to my life. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, but something made me check the peephole. Isabella stood there, looking smaller than I remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. In her arms was a baby carrier. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you'd even let me in. I'm not sure I will." "What do you want?" "To apologize. Really apologize. Not the crying, dramatic version from the hospital. I want to tell you the truth." I considered slamming the door in her face. Instead, I stepped aside and let her in. She settled the car seat on my couch. Inside was a tiny baby girl, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that her existence was the product of the worst betrayal of my life. "Her name is Sophia," Isabella said, "after Mom. A cheap play for my emotions, using our dead mother's name. But I looked at the baby and saw only innocence. Whatever her parents had done, she was blameless." "The truth," I said, sitting in the chair across from them. "You have 5 minutes." Isabella took a shaky breath. "I was jealous. I've been jealous of you my whole life. You were smarter, more responsible, more loved. When Mom and Dad died, everyone praised you for stepping up, for being so mature. No one noticed that I was hurting too, that I'd lost my parents at 14. So you slept with my fiancé? I wanted to prove I could take something from you, that I could be chosen over you, just once." She laughed bitterly. "Pathetic, right? I destroyed both our lives to feed my ego." "Yes," I said simply, "it is pathetic. Carlos and I barely speak now. He wants to be a father to Sophia, but I can't stand to look at him. Every time I see him, I'm reminded of what we did to you, of what I lost." "You didn't lose anything, Isabella. You threw it away." She nodded, tears starting to fall. "I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I see it now. What I had in you, what we could have been. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I watched her cry and felt an unexpected calm. I'd imagined this moment so many times in the past 6 months. In some versions, I screamed at her. In others, I threw her out. In a few, I forgave her immediately. But sitting there, watching my sister hold the baby she'd created from her betrayal, I realized I felt none of those extremes. I just felt tired. Tired of holding on to anger that only hurt me. Tired of letting her actions define my life. "I forgive you," I said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What?" "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." I leaned forward. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean we're going to be sisters the way we were. That's gone. You killed it." "I know," she whispered. "However," I continued, looking at the sleeping baby, "that child didn't do anything wrong. She didn't ask to be born into this mess, and she doesn't deserve to pay for your mistakes." "What are you saying?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Miami skyline. "I'm saying that if you need help, real help, with Sophia, I'll be there. Not as your sister, not as your friend, but as her aunt, because she's innocent in all this. Lena, I'm not doing this for you." I cut her off. "I'm doing this for her, and for me, because I'm not going to let your actions turn me into someone bitter and cold. I'm going to build a life so full, so happy, so complete that what you did becomes just a footnote in my story." Isabella was crying harder now, but these were different tears. Relief, maybe, or grief for what we'd lost. "There are conditions," I said. "You tell Sophia the truth when she's old enough to understand it. You don't lie to her the way you lied to me. You get therapy, real therapy, and you figure out how to be a mother without using me as a crutch." "I can do that," she said. "I will do that. And Carlos," I added, "he doesn't get to be part of this. Whatever arrangement you make with him about Sophia is between you two. But when I'm with her, he's not welcome. He doesn't deserve to be part of this. she said softly. He destroyed us just as much as I did. I returned to my chair. You both made choices. You're both living with the consequences. I'm choosing to move forward. We sat there for a while longer, not saying much, watching Sophia sleep. It wasn't comfortable, and we'd never be close again, but it was a start. A strange, broken, complicated start towards something new. When Isabella left, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. Like I'd put down a weight I'd been carrying for 6 months. That night, I called Marisa and told her everything. "Are you insane?" she asked. "After everything she did?" "Maybe," I admitted. "But I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing this for me. My revenge isn't going to be hating her forever. It's going to be living so well that her betrayal becomes irrelevant." "You're a better person than me," Marisa said, "but I'll support you. And if she screws you over again, I'm still prepared to commit murder." I laughed. Deal. Months turned into a year. I got promoted at school to vice principal. I started dating again, carefully, taking my time. Sophia grew into a beautiful toddler who called me Titi Lena and lit up when she saw me. Isabella and I maintained a cordial distance, connected only through the child who hadn't asked to be the product of betrayal. I heard that Carlos had moved to Orlando, taking a job with a different fire department, trying to start over somewhere new, away from the ruins of what he'd destroyed. I felt nothing about this. He'd become a stranger, someone I used to know. My abuela and I slowly rebuilt our relationship through family therapy. It wasn't easy, but we both committed to honesty, even when it hurt. And me? I learned that revenge doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be destruction. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let betrayal define you. It's building a life so full of joy, of purpose, of love, that the people who tried to break you become irrelevant. I still teach 2nd grade. I still help my students make construction paper hearts every February. I still answer my phone at 3:42 p.m. when it rings, though now I don't panic. I'm not waiting for the next catastrophe. I'm just living, and that, I've learned, is the sweetest revenge of all.